Hello and welcome back to the Bucket Bros. We've got outdoor Bobby. We've got indoor
Here I
Ronnie.
am.
Yes, he is. He is there. Ah, how are you doing, sir? Sounds like you are in such a peaceful, tranquil place, just thinking about the games and everything that's gone on. What are your thoughts? How are you feeling? How are you doing?
I mean, I'm in a little slice of paradise called Charlotte, North Carolina. Well, spring in Charlotte, North Carolina. When it's starting to get warm, when it's starting to get green, before all the bugs show up, it's a really good time to be here. Highly recommend. So yeah, I'm just sitting outside on the back porch. Hope you guys don't mind some of the birds chirping. Um,
No, not at all. So yeah, about last night, we were just kind of talking. Uh, you sadly fell asleep during the games. I turned them off in the middle of them because I just am an old man and can't stay up. And just like my buddies who were talking, it was way too late. But yes, I feel like this morning we all kind of caught up on some amazing games and performances from last night. I will just let you kind of take it away and we will kind of go from there.
well, I think that the two hallmark games were the Warriors at Grizzlies, and then after that game started a little bit later, there was the was it Nuggets at T Wolves? Did I get that right? They were in
No, in
Minnesota.
Denver. They were in
They were
Denver.
in Denver. Oh wow. So yeah, so Minnesota at Denver. They were both great games, nail biters. Definitely with playoff feel and a lot of play in and playoff ranking implications going into the end of the season
Mm-hmm.
here. There is going to be quite the crunch, particularly out west. I mean, there's a handful of games out east that will be fun to watch for those last 5, 6 maybe play in spots moving forward. But the big ones
As
are
far as
really going to
seeding,
be
are
yeah
all
yeah yeah
10
yeah
teams are in. Like the Bulls have clinched, so those 10 are the 10 that are there. It's just a matter of where they're going to fall in place, correct?
Yeah, right. I mean, even though it's crazy because the Nuggets, for example, as we sit here this afternoon, the Nuggets are 3 games ahead of Minnesota, who's at 7th now, after last night.
Mm-hmm.
Denver's still hanging out in the 3 spot. I mean, my suspicion is that teams like the Rockets in particular, I think are just too far ahead. But the Nuggets and perhaps even the Lakers are not going to fall into that play-in spot. But it's possible. It is possible for the number 3 and 4 seeds right now to become play-in teams before we reach the end of the season. And some of the big games coming up to keep an eye on. I mean, it's going to be a lot of the players that you would expect, but even just in these next couple days. Tomorrow we got the Lakers against the Warriors, and then again the following night. What a terrible back-to-back for the Warriors! But they got the Warriors against the Nuggets, and then I think some of the games moving forward. I mean, there are going to be some good ones just because it's like any team, and there's a lot on this list, especially the Lakers who have to play OKC twice. I mean, those could be 2 losses right there and could really make a difference. So, not necessarily the outcome of that game will determine, OKC seeding, but could really have an impact on the Lakers. But after that, there are a few other good ones. I mean, on the 6th, these poor Warriors then have to face the Houston Rockets, and then after that, on the 10th, April 10th, we got the Grizzlies versus the T-Wolves. And then the Nuggets the following night are also facing the Grizzlies. Man, these are going to be some awesome games. It's basically like the playoffs before the playoffs, and which is
Yeah.
kind of what we had last night. Obviously, we'll be getting into that a little bit. But those were some of the ones that stand out to me. I mean, the Warriors against the Clippers on April 13th. I mean, that could be the decision between 6 and 7. We'll see how this all plays out. But I suppose getting into last night, we could talk about the games a little bit if you like.
Yeah, no, I was going
Any,
to agree with you and kind of leads into the games last night as far as kind of in my head, I'm thinking like the last like 3 or 4 nights have felt like a playoff feel to a lot of the bigger games that have been going on. And at least for me as a Timberwolf fan, it started with that last game against the Pistons with that fight and with Nas Reed, Dante DiVincenzo, even the coaches and JB Bickerstaff getting ejected. At least for me, is seeing kind of that happen with those guys. To me, it's like, all right, the playoffs have started. At least for the Timberwolves, they have this mentality that I feel like is going to lead them on this kind of surge, and seeing that last night against the Nuggets. But we can start with the early game of the Warriors and the Grizzlies. So to me, it's this playoff intensity, like you said, this next few days and at least week or two up into the playoffs, it already has that feel like these teams are getting in there, trying to get this tuned up and ready to go.
Well, you mentioned, Naz Reid and DiVincenzo were both out last night, so you didn't get quite the full picture with the T-Wolves.
And Jamal Murray.
Jamal Murray was out of that game as well. But sorry, you wanted to jump into the other game first. So
yes,
yeah,
yes.
I mean,
chronologically.
I mean, that was a fun offensive game to watch for the hallmark guards on each team. Obviously, Steph had another 50-point game. He had 12 3-pointers in that game. If I'm not mistaken, it was off the top of my head, it was either 12 for 20 or 12 for 21. He hit double-digit threes with, I think, like 5 minutes left to go in the third quarter. So it was looking a little bit like a game that he could really be chasing the record. And I think his 3-point percentage became slightly less efficient as the game went on because he really was gunning for it. But there's actually been a couple of games like that recently. I'm stalling here because I want to get pulled up. He had another game not too long ago where he also hit double digit, like in the third quarter, and it was looking like, oh, maybe he could get Clay's 14, and then just came up just. It was another 12.3 or 12 3-pointer game against Orlando. Also, the last time he scored 50 points. But yeah, what a display from Steph last night. 52 points on 31 shots, 12 of 20, as I mentioned, from three, made all his 3-pointers. The 10 rebounds, 8 assists, and 5 steals ain't too shabby either. We'll see how the matchups end up laying out. But I would like Golden State against this Grizzlies. We've certainly talked about the Grizzlies, like Shea, Shea. Ja just really hasn't quite been the Ja of the past. It's slightly less efficient, although not last night. Last night he really was eating up some of the
Grizzlies announcers made it, and yes, Steph was being Steph, but listening to the Grizzlies announcers, it seemed as if Ja had like a 60-point game and Steph had a 12-point game. So they were definitely like, oh, Ja, like he's been spectacular tonight. It was just kind of funny to see and granted, yes, he had a great game, but the fact that it was under what Steph was doing was still
well. They were
no, it was a fun. Like
they've been waiting for it. They've been waiting for it. They want to see him have a big game and a big moment like this. And they've been a little harder to come by this year. He hasn't had that sort of like freak like outings that we feel that he's had in previous years. Mm-hmm. I know there's been a lot of circumstances leading up to this that would perhaps account for him having an inconsistent year. Maybe it's just that he hasn't really developed a few parts of his game over the past couple of years that really he should have. And so, as each passing year goes, if your game doesn't change, if your game doesn't evolve, defenses are going to eventually have somewhat of an answer for you, if not even be able to completely figure you out. But, I fear that maybe Ja is starting to fall into that category. But, last night in particular, I saw him hitting a lot of mid-rangers and floaters that I've been, really almost like dying to see him hit. Like where's that touch? Where's that absence of you just trying to like bully your way in, all 170 pounds of you trying to bully your way in into these other guys and actually, use the threat of your athleticism to create some distance and get some near-ish to the basket shots. I feel like he was able to do that. Anytime Ja goes 5 for 8 from outside, he's generally going to have a good game because if the 3-pointer is working for him that night, it really just adds a well-roundedness to his game that's not usually there. Jaren Jackson Jr., he's having a great season. Not a very efficient scoring night last night. He had 22 points on 20 field goal attempts. I mean, that said, I just still like watching this guy. I still like the way he has really been able to work in the post and get downhill. And again, he was at least chasing those opportunities. He had a few good looks, I feel like, that just didn't go in, which could have, changed the stat line, maybe even changed the outcome of the game. But yeah, I mean, this would be, if this ends up being like the 4-5 matchup, this would be pretty cool to see play out for a full series.
Yeah, that would mean that the Lakers would have to drop a few spots. But yeah,
They play OKC twice. Hey, they play OKC twice. Those two games in and of themselves could be a big difference maker.
We need to get you a fortune teller's ball then, if you're predicting these things and they come to fruition.
I'm not afraid to make predictions. I'm not afraid to be wrong. Just check out the last episode. It is all me predictions. It is an hour and 20 minutes of me just making nonsense predictions.
Yeah, no, and I think at least for me to finally get a good look at what they can do and scoring, like, what was it, the last couple games they've at least been putting up some points. So for the Grizzlies, they're a fun team to watch, like you said, and just the amount of characters that are on there. So yeah, to me that was a high quality game. I lost my other train of thought going into at least like what are your takeaways, at least from what you think we're going to get from Jimmy and the Warriors here the rest of the year? What, I know this is kind of a surprise. Like, what would do you see them? What are your visions of what could be potentially with them?
So for this year in particular,
yeah, just this season, kind of what are you seeing that gives you hope, or that you could see being a worry?
So, sort of, I would have to really be butting off of what I was talking about last episode, where I mean, I do have more questions or doubts than I do, feelings of optimism. I feel like that's a bold thing to say almost in with their recent success, especially post Jimmy trade. But as I mentioned last time, they were beating up a lot of weaker teams or good teams that didn't necessarily have their best player or one of their best players playing that night. The offense just, it's just so shaky when Steph's not out there. Now, that said, when I was watching the third quarter, rewatching anyway, the Jimmy led bench offense wasn't as much actually running through Jimmy to start the sets, and I think it looked a lot better. I don't know that they were able to necessarily generate great shots, but they were moving the ball a little bit better and in a way that looked a little bit more like high IQ basketball. He had some, him playing off the ball actually ended up looking great. It was like those maybe like Pajensky led lineups, the non-Draymond, non-Steph lineups. Although the Jimmy Draymond, lineups, you kind of have to worry about those too. But again, at least in that scenario, Jimmy can play a little bit off ball, get more into cutting, which I know he really wants to do. Yeah, I mean, I hate to keep being so hard.
That's exactly kind of what I was hoping that you would answer. Not that specific answer, but the fact that they only won by 9 when Steph puts up 52 points. So it's like you can't rely on Steph doing that, because what he's had 3 of those this season, I believe. Not that I want to try to quiz you off the top of your head, but it's like that's an over expectation of what Steph can do for you. So that's why I'm curious to know what, like you said, if he goes down with something, or if he's just exhausted and needs a longer break in the third quarter, and then kind of your plus minus goes, because the Jimmy led offense can't do anything. So at least, like you said, maybe there's hope with something with him not being the center point of it. So that's why I was curious with that.
It's only one game, and you can only put so much stock into it. But I mean, Steph was plus 17 in the box score, versus Jimmy's plus 6, and I know that the Steph Jimmy minutes are definitely dragging up his number. I mean, considering the fact that they won by 9, and I know I'm almost positive that Jimmy's essentially playing all like the minutes that Steph is off the court. Like, it kind of just, in a way, it's sort of outlines what happens on the court when Steph's not out there, as you alluded to. But yeah, I mean, overall fun game. I'm still worried about the Memphis Grizzlies defense. I think offensively they're fine, especially with the depth that they have. How that might translate in the playoffs could be a little concerning, but it should go noted that they've lost their last 4 games. They certainly dropped quite a bit in the standings with that. Well, a couple ranks, but that's pretty big right now when it comes to teams out west. It seems that they at the moment anyway they have the tiebreaker over the T-Wolves, who have the tiebreaker over the Clippers. I don't know where the Warriors stand within all of that. I feel like they never have the tiebreaker, but it's kind of been a little bit of a slide for the Grizzlies. And to close the season, they do have their next 3 games are below 500 teams, but then their last 3 games are going to be against Minnesota, Denver, and Dallas, and that can really determine where things end up for them. Could be concerning. Post coach firing, things could still be concerning for the Grizzlies here.
We never got into that. Could you give any kind of backstory on what was going on, if there's anything going on behind the scenes, or what was the reason for him being fired with a team in the playoffs 10 games before the playoffs?
I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert on Grizzlies culture here.
You're
I think any
Memphis
take
insider.
I mean, I'm close enough. You think I should be, but any take I have, I think it's just going to be like a shared opinion based on what y'all have heard. But essentially, what I gathered was, all right. So this team is still, I would consider, an up and coming team. They've kind of leveled off, or plateaued rather, recently with a similar squad as their core. They've still sort of been developing along the way, and a lot of the players, some of them that they've just given away, have popped. But that said, I think it's when a team is up and coming, you kind of have like the coach that gets you to be good as a squad, but then sometimes you sort of you hit that ceiling, and then you need the coach that's going to get you over the hump. So the Grizzlies coach, who's fired Taylor Jenkins, I just think that the feeling was that he was kind of on the hot seat just because they haven't really seen much progress with this squad. Obviously they've shown that they could be about a 50-win team year after year, which is awesome. That shouldn't be discredited, because that's hard to do in the NBA consistently. But yeah, I think they're just kind of looking for that next offensive shift to help get him over the hump. I don't know. I mean, you can figure point all you want, but yeah, I don't know. I won't say that this current squad is even capable of doing that necessarily. I think it's multifactorial, but the easiest thing to do is go with a coaching change in personnel, and so kind of a weird time to do it. You feel like they should have just done it at the beginning of the season. Just do it at the beginning of the season or before the season starts. And I don't know. Maybe it's just because they thought, I can honestly not suggest why. Maybe they thought that they were gonna.
Did they just put an interim assistant coach in place?
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
you can't bring somebody else in to kind of have any kind of cohesion. And
So
you got to keep the same program. Otherwise, it's like you're not going to rebuild the offense right before the playoffs.
Not necessarily rebuild, but I think end up having. I think there's going to be just like less of a blend of styles going on, and
okay.
Yeah, who knows? This might give them a little bit more direction. Obviously, they're not winning games right now, so and I don't know that necessarily has anything to do with the coach. But yeah, we'll see how the rest of the season goes. Like I said, they got 6 games, 6 big ones in front of them. So, yeah. But I don't know. I honestly don't know if the interim coach is going to end up being a permanent spot for them, or if they're going to be going shopping this offseason.
All right. Well, yeah. Well, then let's jump into the other game. Fantastic game last night. The Timberwolves and the Nuggets, which ended up being a 140-139 win by the Timberwolves in Denver in double overtime. There were some, obviously, the takeaways and the headlines you're going to hear about are Russell Westbrook's kind of miscues at the end, the missed layup and the bad foul. So he kind of gets a dirty name in this, but otherwise, and otherwise, he still had a really good game. Jokic is 61-point triple-double. It's the highest one this season, or at least within the last few years. But yeah, what an unbelievable game. Anthony Edwards had 37 points, I believe. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who was fouled on a three-point attempt, hit the free throws at the end of the game with 0.1 second, or with a tenth of a second left, and ended up winning the game. What I will let you speak first before I hog whatever I want to say here, and then we can get back and forth. What were your takeaways from last night's game?
Well, I mean, I said after the last Timberwolves Nuggets game that the Nuggets were not going to make it easy on the T-Wolves, and they didn't. But boy, were the T-Wolves able to scrape this one out. I certainly felt like, I mean, anytime these two teams match up, are we actually developing a real rivalry in the NBA? Is it happening? Is there an actual rivalry that's not based on history, but one that's truly just developing before our eyes? I would say if so, this is probably the closest that we've seen in a while. I hope it continues, but yeah, I mean, that was a great way to grind it out and close and not give up by the T-Wolves. I think, I mean, stylistically, I don't know that there was anything exceptional or different or anything like that. It was a lot of, Jokic doing his thing, trying to spit it out to other guys, trying to score when he could, and boy, he did a lot of it. And then on the other end of the floor, it was, it was a lot of half-court offense that was going through, if not Randall, Edwards, Conley. I did like Edwards had some good off-ball moments. He had a big corner three in the second overtime, I believe. I do think that there was a couple of moments where I really felt like the T-Wolves were going to run away with it in overtime, but Aaron Gordon hit like two monster threes, I think, in the first and second overtime. That really kept him in it. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, it looked like the Nuggets should have won. It was a bit, as you said, a bit of a Westbrook blunder towards the end there. It was like two out of the last three possessions essentially where first he had a chance at the rim that he missed, but ended up getting the foul. Split the free throws.
That was before that then.
Yeah. So two possessions prior to that, he had a really good look from I believe it was a pass from Jokic at a layup, and ended up getting the foul. If I'm not mistaken, that was McDaniel's foul. Don't quote me on that. But he split the free throws, and that had the game. That had them up by one, and then I'm sorry, that tied the game, and then Jokic ended up getting a foul off the ball on the following possession, and he also split the free throws, and then so that put them up by one, which and then the final possession, obviously we know Westbrook missed a layup and then ended up getting the foul on the other end that cost them the game. So you do feel like the Nuggets should have pulled that one out. So still the T-Wolves get the win. That's how it's going to go down in the standings forever anyway. I didn't feel that sense of dominance from the T-Wolves as I had recently in a lot of the Nuggets matchups. We sort of mentioned already that
they were down at the beginning too. Like it's like their standard. Like they came out super flat. I think when I first looked at the box, like when I saw before I started watching it, I was like, oh man, like it was like 23-5 or something to get started. I was like, oh, here we go. Nuggets are gonna cry. Like it's just because every time they do that, it takes a Herculean effort to come back, and you're just like, man. But at least they've done it so many times now, and I feel like it's become commonplace against at least the Nuggets that they just we'll let Jokic beat us, and that's why I'm surprised that Gordon had such a great game too. So
yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that because the Nuggets actually have that exact same trend. I think they've really lost a lot of first quarters this season. So kind of funny that you feel that the T-Wolves were worse on that end. But yeah, I don't know how these two teams would end up facing each other in the playoffs. It would have to be probably probably have to be like a second or third round matchup. I mean, maybe if the Nuggets can stay at 3 and the T Wolves can jump up to 6, that would be. I think that would be a first round matchup that neither of those teams would want. I mean, maybe they would relish it, but yeah. They're gonna beat each other up for like 6 or 7 games every time, it seems.
Yeah. No, and I think at least and this is going to be a controversial take that I've mentioned. The one thing that at least I'm noticing that whether it's I'm watching the recaps or whether I am watching it live, I'm noticing a not a forcing, but that there all of a sudden Gobert all of a sudden gets dunks. It's like if we can feed Gobert, if he's getting 8 dunks a game, like something good is going to happen. Like it just opens up the rest of it because one, we don't if our defensive player can be in an offensive role, scoring points, that then opens up Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle, who does not look since coming back from his injury, does not look like the New York Knick or the Los Angeles Laker Julius Randle. What I'm seeing, at least within the last 3 games, is he's still dribbling as much, but it's not laterally. It's not a back down. It's positive and to the hole from what I'm at least seeing because he's having so many more assists because he's forcing the defense to react to him versus being standstill dribbling. It's like a movement dribble. Like the dribble is going towards the hoop and then he's able to at least distribute. And so for me, if you have him moving positively towards the hoop, you have Anthony Edwards who maybe doesn't want to dunk on everybody, but wants to force people in so that he can take his step back 3. If you have those 2 guys pushing in, which will then open up quick assists to Gobert to dunk, or you're hitting Nah or McDaniels in the corners for 3, to me, those are things to get the ball moving around is what gets me excited for something to happen this year. It's just like I said, I keep thinking 6 is that ceiling. I've been saying it since like week 2. But yeah, to me, it's good to see within these last couple games, just them having that fight, having the resiliency and getting the big man involved so that one, there's a reason for him to be on the floor the whole game versus being an offensive liability. And granted, I know this time of year is going to be different because each possession is going to be keyed on differently and played defensively differently when we get into the playoffs. So if the Timberwolves can get over those slow starts by feeding him the ball early and getting him going, at least it then helps not get into a bigger hole and can at least maximize your chances later in the game of not having to expend a bunch of energy to come back 25 points in a game.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think Julius Randle's been playing for the most part with more conviction lately, and I think it's smart for the T-Wolves to run their offense through him more. As long as he's making quick decisions and not just trying to put the ball on the floor. Yeah, I mean that's when he's at his absolute best, and I think we've been seeing that lately, and that's in big part, why the T-Wolves have just been doing so well. It's kind of like you wish you saw this style of this squad have had a chance to play out for the entirety of the season because they could be in a different spot right now if that was the case. So, I mean, we're still stuck on this year, and certainly if Randle opts into his player option, we could get a full squad, a full season of the squad actually looking the way that they are now, and plus some, with a little bit more continuity. So I think there's a lot of upside there anyway, at least for this upcoming season. But yeah, anyway, focusing on the playoffs, excited to see. I mean, if the T-Wolves, whether or not they steal that 6 spot or 5 spot potentially, or end up in the play-in, I still think that we're going to see them in the playoffs. So that's certainly my take on that. But yeah, great game, great watch, good 61 point on 29 shot Jokic performance, which is just an absurd thing to say. Oh yeah, he had a triple double. I know you mentioned that already. So yeah. If you wanna confuse who you're gonna vote for MVP, go ahead and watch that game. Go ahead and watch that performance from Jokic.
You say what? let's get into that. I think that is something. I had a text full of conversations this morning about who the MVP should be and how it's skewed one way or another. So yeah, let's get into this. What are your takeaways? What should we be expecting? What should happen? I'm curious to know what we're going to hear when is it usually the conference finals when that award is announced. So yeah, I'm just curious to hear what your take is on who should win this MVP.
Well, one thing that's added some clarity anyway is that it's a two-man award, or it's a two-man race to the award anyway this year. And if I've said this before, but if you were to take either of these guys' individual performance and plot them on a different NBA season, I think at least for Shea, like 9 times out of 10, it would seem he would be the winner, and then for Jokic, like 10 times out of 10, he would be the winner. But it just makes it so much more complicated with how exceptionally well the Thunder have been playing this year, while Shea is having a peak season for him thus far at this point in his career. So I mean, I ultimately think it's going to be Shea who wins it. I think if I had a vote, that would be it comes down to the wire.
Really?
How about this? If OKC wins 70 games, which they still have the opportunity to do, they'd have to win out their season.
Yeah.
But I think my hypothetical vote would go to Shea, but it's so
they
tough
got
because
70.
Yeah.
If they got 69, what is your vote?
Still not gonna cut it. Not gonna cut it.
Gotta be 70.
Even then. I mean, at this point, I feel like, if 0 other games were played, your mind should be pretty much made up at this point. But it is still. I mean, it is kind of like a coin flip for me. It really is. It's because Jokic averaging a triple double this year. He'll be the third player, assuming that he continues on this trend. He'll be the third player to have ever done that. But he's doing it incredibly efficiently. His on-offs obviously are ridiculous. So are Shea's, by the way. Shea's on-off stats, on-off advanced stats are absolutely ridiculous as well. So, but even still, I mean, give the edge to Jokic leading there. Which I
think it's as of a couple hours.
Jokic or Shea?
Oops. Sorry, I apologize. I'm trying to look at too many different things at once. But no, what it's listed here, and I can't tell. Let's see. That's a few days behind. I apologize to interrupt.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I think what you're looking at there is probably going to carry out the season close, or at least be very, very close. But at any rate, so yeah, I mean, it's tough because you ask yourself, like, what do you consider the most valuable player? How do you really truly gauge that? It's not just like who's the best player. It's definitely not that. But you have to say, like, and well, how does this player's performance contribute to winning? And I mean, at the end of the day, I really genuinely believe that especially this year would be a stellar example of just like how Jokic's, I don't know, perplexing performances just really raise the floor, ceiling, whatever you want to call it, just raise the bar for his team exponentially. And I don't think there's any other player in the NBA who does it quite like that this season, this season included. And like I said, we got the triple double. I mean, he's going to break the record for single season BPM this year come season close. He's on pace to do it currently. And but that said, when you get a guy who's on a team that could potentially win 70 games this year, who is the best defensive team perhaps ever, who has a team who has a historic net rating, a guy who's leading the league in scoring, who, if you look at his stat line, you can say nobody's done that since Jordan. I mean, I really think Shea's going to get it, and I think he deserves it. That's one of the points I forgot to make. So, yes. So, again, the reason I say 10 out of 10 for Jokic versus 9 out of 10 for Shea, if you were to take their season and extrapolate it on any other season in comparison, like why Jokic could/should win is just because nobody has ever done what you have displayed for us here. I mean, the three major stat categories, points, rebounds, assists, he's top 3 in all of them. That alone is absurd. And then you throw steals in the mix. He's second in the league in steals. Is it, at least when this graphic was created? I don't know if that's current as of this moment, but yeah, nobody.
He's second in the. I checked it this morning. He has 1.8 steals per game behind Dyson Daniels. But he is, and this is the biggest knock on Jokic, he is 60th in the league in blocks as a center. So that he should be ashamed of himself. He needs to get in the gym and work on that vertical and get in there at 0.7 blocks per game. So he's got a game. Part of his game he needs to improve on for next season.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of rim protecting moments from Jokic moving forward. Sure to come. No, but it's it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. It's historic. I don't know that this will ever be done again. So it's a shame that this was just not quite enough, and probably will not be quite enough to win an MVP. So hold on, take a moment while I'm reading this graphic.
Yeah, so it's just he's a generational. I feel like I mentioned to my friends, he's approaching. He's not in, but I feel like he's approaching the GOAT conversation. Like if he manages to maybe get 2 more championships, and I obviously I could do the Max Verstappen if whatever. But he's sniffing. He's approaching the GOAT conversation. He should be in the conversations with Kobe, LeBron, just because of the fact that he's putting these performances for seasons together, and he's won championships. So the fact that he's able to do all these things, and we look at other big men, and it's funny, Shaq the other night was talking about how he would destroy him and he'd be fighting his brothers. And so it's like if they were to play together in the same time frame, it's like, sure, but there's so many different things. Just because he's playing in this version, hitting threes, like Shaq, you weren't doing that. Like he would just stayed out there and I think one of the stats I sent you, like the range of his deep threes, like he's one of the deepest. He shoots from the farthest away and is still managing to shoot 40%. So just what he's doing is just remarkable, and it's hard. And yes, I love SGA and I love what he's doing. He's one of those guys that in my head, I wish I would have had that talent at being a smaller guard to do all the stuff that he's able to do. That I would have wanted to emulate and do everything that SGA does. But like this season, watching Jokic, realizing like what the catalog of seasons that he's putting together is just remarkable. And he deserves his flowers as much as he doesn't want them and just wants to go watch his horses. So it's nuts that this isn't. You can tell it is a passion, but it's really not. And it's like, man, if he had like a Jordan level of like craziness or Kobe's, it's like, man, he would just tear everybody up. It'd be like 60 every game.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention the 30-20-20 triple-double. That's also never been done before. So, yeah, you put all that together.
I can bring the graphic back up if you need it.
Yeah, you put all that together, and you I mean, the guy's got a case for MVP. If you vote for him, you're not voting incorrectly. Whoever wins is certainly going to be deserving of it. I still think it's going to go to Shea. Whether or not I really think that he was like truly an MVP this year. But how do you split those hairs? That's really, really tough. I mean, just look at, at the end of the day, just look at the standings and look at what this Oklahoma City Thunder has been able to accomplish behind Shea. So I don't, the Thunder would be good without Shea, but not this good. And so yeah, I mean, he's sort of
And
the
how good would the Nuggets be?
yeah, I mean, they would be like
Like that's the
relegation
thing. Like,
status.
and that's I had this up here before. How do you define the MVP? Because is it the most valuable player? Like, I guess that's the ongoing question and quest that we're all trying to figure out. But is it, let's take Shea, and again, I know that that's the on-offs that you're talking about. If we take one of the players off of the team, like how much better are they going to be? But
Wait, show that again.
legitimately,
Show that again, real quick. It's what's important is just how deep in the red the Nuggets are when Jokic is not on. That's the craziest thing is you're looking at Shea's team and they're still very much in the positive when he's
but
off
I
the
feel like
floor.
that difference is almost the same. The net positive of those, of him being like the plus 16 versus the 9. Like, so offensively, they're that much better. Yes, when Jokic is off. So it almost evens out. So, yes, I get what you're saying by defensively, they're that much worse, but offensively, and granted, like you said, the Thunder are a great team. Like, that's part of it too. And the Nuggets are also a very good team. And again, they're not elite the way that the Thunder are looking right now. So, yeah, it's, to me, it's a great conversation. It's getting a lot of people talking about it, and they all have kind of their own opinions. So it's definitely been fun to hear.
Not super viciously anyway. If in case I heard you, or in case I didn't hear you correctly, rather, if you're telling me that Jokic is that the defensive numbers for like on off for the Nuggets are worse when he's on, I mean, it doesn't. I don't think it really shows it in that stat because it's just kind of overall. But the advanced numbers for defense actually work very, very well for Jokic. That's another ongoing debate. I mean, the eye test doesn't show it for the way he
Yeah, but
protects the rim, but defensively he is a smart player. I mean, there's a reason he's number 2 in the league in steals, is because he kind of knows how to like fit his strengths to maximize what he can do on the defensive floor for a team, especially in like a team defense type setting. Because he's never gonna try to catch up to a guy who feels like has already beaten him, because he knows like I'm gonna be beat, and he's never gonna do any sort of I don't know, acrobatic measure to defend the rim, because he knows that it's just going to lead to him fouling the guy. So, that's part of his IQ. And I mean, it's like those little things. It's like, well, you're not making a defensive move, but that can actually increase your defensive numbers, is because you're at the end of the day, you're making the smarter move. So he does that enough that the cumulative effect is that actually Jokic, while one-on-one doesn't always look like the best defender, he holds the line super, super well. I will say that. But I mean, it still works, and he's still a positive on both ends of the
yeah,
floor.
no, and I
So
guess that's more of the when he's on or off. I think people kind of mix up that discussion. I more or less, if we're defining the MVP, if you pull, like, you void SGA off of the Thunder and you void Jokic off, like, how big of a difference of them just not being on that team? That's where it's like, is their importance ranked on that, or is it the fact that the Thunder are having this crazy season that team needs to be rewarded by that best player getting the MVP? I feel like, is
I
that
think
the
so.
narrative that kind of has to be played out? Like, this team
Yeah.
did so well, we need to reward it by placing this player here as the MVP. And so
I
that's,
think,
I guess it's,
yeah.
and my other thought, the only other reason that people kind of have had this discussion is the D Rose LeBron year, where Rose got it and everybody kind of now is coming back like, oh, LeBron should have gotten that. He had the best stats. So is LeBron in kind of the Jokic role here. And then because the Bulls had such a great season and D Rose was such an impact, like, that's why he was given the MVP.
Yeah. I mean, they wouldn't have been a 62 win team without D Rose. I mean, they could have been a good team, just scraping
Yeah.
by, winning games defensively. But yeah, no, it's tough, man. It's always going to be.
It's
I
great
mean, we hope
sports
so
radio
anyway.
banter. Yeah.
We hope so. Yeah, we hope it's always going to be this way. I mean, just the fact that you can say like, there's a guy who's amongst the top three in almost every stat category. The three major stat categories, he's top three, and then he's top three in steals as well. He's averaging a near 30-point triple-double, and his on-offs are absolutely ridiculous. But there's a good chance he's not going to win the MVP. The fact that we can even say that is absolutely absurd, and it underlies just kind of how incredible this. This has been a good year for the NBA. I really do. There's going to be a lot of haters out there who talk about ratings or people who don't watch enough games who talk about stylistically how the game looks with 3-pointers and foul calls and such like that. And
I think the ratings for the season aren't going to matter. I feel like people are aware kind of what's happening. I think let's look at the conference final and finals numbers and compare them to previous years, because I feel like people will be coming in to see what's happening for these, and probably throughout the playoffs we'll see some spikes in some games because there's going to be some high quality matchups that are coming, and I think that's what gets people excited and will kind of bring them out. The birds agree with me.
They're chirping. They're chirping for Ronnie. All right. Well, yeah. I don't need to
digress.
I feel like I digress. I know it sounds like I'm saying Jokic should win the MVP, but I do feel like Shea is going to fairly win it. That's about all I can say about that.
No, at least I've wrapped my head around it just by babbling on, so at least I
important.
Get it.
We need this.
Yeah.
We need this.
So the next one that I'm curious, I have my kind of thought, but it's probably a very misinformed thought. The defensive player of the year. I'm curious to get your thoughts. I know there's quite a few names. We got Jalen Jackson Jr., we got Dyson Daniels. I feel like there was names I'm like, no, I'm not going to say those names. But there's always a few other ones that can be thrown in the mix. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are and where do you think this award is going to go at the end.
So, you're throwing out some of the big names. I feel like a couple you haven't mentioned are Draymond, Evan Mobley.
Oh, yes.
No.
I forgot we don't have our Evan Mobley button. It's been missing. We haven't given the Cavs their flowers recently, even though they're still doing great.
Yeah. Well, so this was supposed to be the easiest award handed out this season, but then Wembanyama got hurt and does not meet the 65-game criteria, and so now it gets complicated. Now it's going to feel a little bit like years have passed. It's tough because there's really no like one number or one stat that you can really look to choose defensive player of the year, especially this season. It's a lot of these guys that their impact sort of hides out in the background, and so you just kind of have to look at like eye test and team performance to determine a lot of it. So, because even if you start looking at like defensive advanced numbers, you're going to get like OKC's like Kaysen Wallace and Shea like really close to the top. You're going to get Hartenstein up at the top just because team defense seems to outperform, what the numbers can capture individually. So that said, my opinion is going to very much mirror the MVP conversation opinion, and I'm going to stay in Oklahoma City with this one. And I'm going to give, who I think anyway is the best defensive player on the best defensive team. And I'm going to say I think Lou Dort should win it. I don't necessarily think that that's who's going to be picked. It's hard for guards to win, especially when it's. You'd almost think that when it's kind of murky like this year, this would be the chance for a guard to win actually. But I think it's more likely voters will default to a big man, in particular Evan Mobley. I think is probably going to be the other front runner. Draymond, you got a conversation for. You always do. It's kind of it's insane that we can even still talk about Draymond as a potential defense of the year candidate. But he is kind of looking like that guy again this year. That said, yeah, I at least my vote would go to Lou Dort. OKC, every time they play, he's guarding the best player on the best team. And if you kind of go down the line of some of the better players in the NBA, how they perform when they face OKC, you'll see like huge performance drops. I mean, just think of like any awesome player who you think like Dort would be the guy. You know, he would be the guy guarding this player this game, and like look at their stats versus OKC. Now, yeah, I mean we're talking like 1, 2, 3 game sample sizes, so it's very very small, but the numbers are exceptionally low, and yeah, I mean that's about the only way you can like truly quantify it. And you can't even say like, oh, okay, well they had a low scoring game. That could have been anybody on the Thunder defending them that caused that. But yeah, I mean I guess you'd have to sort of like delineate like, did Dort actually get a fair share of the defensive possessions against this person? But yeah, I mean that's who I'm making the case for. I don't, he's not leading the league in steals. He's not leading the league in blocks. I don't think that matters as much as just how well this team has been doing as a whole, and I in large part because of Lou Dort. Would they be a good defensive team without Lou Dort? I think so. They have enough. They have enough good going for them. They have a huge cast of guys who know how to play defense. But yeah, I think he should get his flowers. I really do.
No, and I get that's true. Like you said, he is the best defender. He's a great player. He's been fun to watch. I personally, if I had a vote, obviously I'm biased just because I love steals. And for me, and I guess like you mentioned, it is I'd have to watch every single game, understand how each defensive player kind of is impacting the game. Yes, there's all of these other defensive metrics that we can look at. The one that I guess I've got the Tom Waddle. I got to give it the old eye test. And so whenever I'm noticing things on the floor, like the things that stand out to me or the things that grab my attention are like just the steals off of the point guard when they're just not paying attention and just impacting the way that the offense kind of flows just because of some on-ball pressure. So for me, it's Dyson Daniels. He's leading the league in steals at 3.1. I feel like we had an episode very early in the year when it was like, if he keeps this, I don't know if it was him in particular or we were talking about steals, and if someone was able to keep this pace going, I think it might have been at like 3.8. So yes, it was some ridiculous number because he was getting like 7 steals a game for like a 4-game stretch. But I understand that the Hawks in general aren't a very good defensive team. Their opponents are averaging like 100, almost 120 points a game. So I understand how that comes into play. And even like with Memphis and Darren Jackson, dude, like that was one of my buddies had mentioned that Memphis has not been that great of a defensive team as kind of we were expecting. Same with the Timberwolves, and just kind of like teams are the ebb and flow of the season. And so that's why to me at least, I want to go and grab the guy that's getting the most steals. Getting over 3 steals a game to me is impressive. And that's why I would give it to him.
Fair enough. To that I will say it's important to keep in mind that getting a lot of steals can often indicate
taking a lot of chances.
Taking a lot of chances, and therefore unforeseen. Ways that are difficult to calculate of how you actually hurt your team defensively. Yep. Now, I mean, not to say Dyson Daniels. Obviously, he's going to be guarding also the best player on the team, especially if they're within range, like a guard or wing player for him that game. I don't have any metrics pulled up. I would guess, based on what I've heard throughout the season anyway, that his do not stand up to the likes of a guy like Lou Dort. Obviously, the TNIF defensive numbers for the Hawks are pretty weak this year. So, I mean, that's fair. I think he will likely get some
votes. He's gonna get some votes. Yeah, I just don't know where
perhaps end up on an all defensive team, even. Yeah. But I mean, it wouldn't surprise me either way. The steals number shouldn't be balked at. It. That's something to take very seriously. It is kind of a cool accomplishment. It's cool to average a guy. It's cool to see a guy average like 3 steals a game nowadays
for being second in the league, and that's the thing. here's Dyson Daniels 3.1, Jokic is second at 1.8. So he's leading by quite a few. Like you said, your first point is one to be taken. Like, yes, you are taking a lot of chances. You're putting your team in a defensive liability if you don't get that steal, and then you're playing from behind and possibly fouling, or just you're essentially forcing a 5-on-4. So there are definitely a lot of things. He's doing it at quite a clip. When I'm watching, it just seems like he's not doing it it's contained and smart the way that he's doing it. And so that's why at least it didn't see, but granted, I haven't watched every single Hawks game, so I'm not sitting here as an Atlanta expert. But from the handful of games I've seen with him, watching it live and being like, okay, those are smart decisions. It didn't seem like he was overextending himself. It was just the way that he got in position was correct. So, like you said, he's guarding the best player. So just because he is one of the best defensive players. So, that's where I'm hanging my hat.
Fair enough.
Want to get into any other ones? Was there any other I'll just throw up honorable mentions. Are there any other mentions that you want to give out as far as end of year awards, coach of the year, sixth man of the year, whatever it might be? Is there any comeback player, most improved? Is there anybody that you feel deserves, or rookie of the year, that needs to be highlighted?
Well, if I would love to see Evan Mobley win one of either defensive player of the year or most improved. I think it's likely most improved would go to, and I'm looking at some of the odds-on favorites here. Cade Cunningham sits near the top, and this is according to FanDuel, by the way. So, for what that's worth, and I think if anything, it would probably go to him just because he is leading his team essentially into a playoff spot where they haven't been in a long time, and he's been pretty sturdy this whole season in doing so. So not only that, but he's going to go from what looked like the verge of a disappointment for a number one pick, somebody who the Pistons really, just the NBA folks in general expected him to sort of lead the Pistons in Harden or Luka fashion, come off a season where they were hitting record-setting lows for losses, and now put himself into likely going to be on an All-NBA team. What a season turnaround! So I think ultimately he will get the nod for most improved player, and rightfully so. But boy, yeah, you're right. I kind of an Evan Mobley fanboy this year. Just really want to see him, and he might get All NBA. And you know what? If he gets All NBA, then I think that trumps any other than Defensive Player of the Year. I take that back. If he wins Defensive Player of the Year, that along with All NBA are kind of like neck and neck in terms of like what it would do for him for his career, and then I think financially with the contracts that he signed, the bonuses that he would get. I'm kind of thinking about it from that perspective as well. Both Evan Mobley and Cade Cunningham. Both Evan Mobley and Cade Cunningham certainly going to likely make some bonuses this year based on their performance, deservedly so. So I would say in terms of other awards, did you want to say anything about most improved player, or otherwise we can kind of
No, I think there's not really anybody else that I would have in mind that I could think of that's done something spectacular besides those two. And to me, definitely seeing Evan Mobley's, like you said, we have fanboyed and been hitting the button on him. It's been really fun to watch him, especially last night with Jarrett Allen and him.
We're going to get a little guest appearance here.
Oh. Hello, everyone.
And this leads us into Rookie of the Year. and the award's going to go to Ellie. So for those who aren't watching, and I do apologize if this adds some noise, but I am now holding my infant daughter. And anyway, so I would say one award that was far more fun to talk about at the beginning of the season than it is now is Rookie of the Year. I could honestly care less who wins that award. I think ultimately Stephon Castle is going to get just between like like the amount of opportunities he's gotten and what he's done with them on the court this year. He's shown us that he's going to be a good player in this league.
Yeah.
Hopefully, he's got he has some things in his game that he has to round out, but he is the odds-on favorite currently. Honorable mentions would be, I mean, Alex Sarr is actually he's climbing, but he's not quite there. Risa Shea has he's essentially as a rookie done his job on the Hawks as a starter, and that's a lot to say for a rookie. So Jalen Wells with the Grizzlies has been a nice little pop of surprise there. Just yet another hit for the Grizzlies in terms of like draft and development. And then yeah, I mean Zach Edey and Khalil Ware are kind of rounding out the list of like odds-on favorites there. But yeah, that is, I honestly think that's going to be the most boring NBA Rookie of the Year perhaps ever, and not a huge surprise given how we thought about the draft going in.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, I'm like counting how, I'm pretty sure there was at least 8 names that you said. I'm thinking Timberwolves jumped up to that number 8 to get Dillingham. Not saying that he's not going to be a good player. It's just we haven't gotten enough to see enough of him to actually have an impact. Like to me, it's so yeah, and it has to go to Castle. I feel like he's definitely, like you said, the only one that's proven if the Spurs were going to go to the playoffs, it's like you'd have trust in that rookie to play his role correctly out of everybody that kind of has come up. So, yeah, it's not an exciting award this year. I feel like, and granted, we're always treated to some sort of big name every year. But then you look at Zion being shut down, and now it's like, what's going to happen with him with these names? And then it's like, Victor gets hurt, and now we got Cooper Flag, and so to me, it's like all these names. It's like who's going to come out? It's always somebody that's a diamond in the rough and kind of comes up, and it's yes, sometimes it is a big name that can kind of make an impact, and we were seeing that with Wembanyama. But will we see that with Cooper Flag next year? Because that's kind of been dubbed his draft now, even though is there speculation he'll go number 1? So who knows? So it kind of gets it curious and exciting, and then boring all in the same conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's any other awards you want to touch on.
What other ones would there be? But no, I don't think there is anything. We don't need to get into coaches. Give it to the Pistons. Is it Luke Walton? Give it to him. The Pistons.
For Coach of the Year, it's probably gonna. I mean, I imagine Coach of the Year would go to well, Bickerstaff is he's at the top of the list, but I would say probably Atkinson would be the likely winner. I don't know. I mean, that's one of the ones that you can argue me into a few different outcomes there. I mean, given that we have like 2 60-win teams this year who have just been really very strongly leading the way throughout the season, I would say give it to one of them for sure, as opposed to the surprising team who is going to be a playoff team this year, but not necessarily.
She disagrees. She agrees with me.
Yeah.
Give it the up and comers
from the peanut gallery here.
All right. Well, I've got nothing else. You can go be a dad. We can kind of wrap this up. I've got to jump on some calls. I appreciate everybody listening, following, watching away, and watching our clips and commenting. Make sure we're getting things worked out and getting them out. So we are all over YouTube. Make sure you check us out there. That's where you're going to get most of our clips from. It's going to be on YouTube. We do have some basketball highlights on Instagram. I am looking into getting WNBA status, so hopefully we'll get some Sky access going here in the next not in the next few weeks. They start in May, so we got about a month away from that. But we are on TikTok, Twitter. Make sure you check us all out. We appreciate you guys staying through if you're still here with us. Thank you. I will let Bobby. This is the Bucket Bros. Anything else?
Thanks for listening, folks. Keep tuning in. Keep commenting. Keep clicking. Doing whatever you do. We appreciate it all.
Yes, indeed. This is the Bucket Bros. See you next time.
Wish.